Man-made changes like the roads that you just saw are some of the challenges confronting people in the Arctic. Consider the impacts of climate change. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as any other place on the planet. Ice is melting, permafrost is thawing. Here to talk more about that is David Biette, his director of the Polar Initiative at the Wilson Center here in Washington. David, welcome.
Thanks.
We've seen progress this year in climate talks. Our reporter, Kate Parkinson in Paris, said obviously there's still some disagreements. China and the United States, last year we saw progress there. How urgent is this issue of climate change to the people of the Arctic?
It's very urgent. Your reporter was just talking about a 2-degree increase in temperature by 2050, and you just said it's happening twice as fast, which means 4 to 8 degrees Celsius by 2050. So it's really, really urgent in the Arctic. It's changing people's lives as we speak.
How realistic is this new ambitious goal they're talking about at Paris climate talks? 1.5 degree Celsius, not 2.00.
Not 2.00, and it's what the Inuit are asking for, too, 1.5. It's a big political problem, particularly with the major emitters.
Can they do that? Can they achieve that goal? I mean, it seems
it's a very ambitious goal. It's a very, very ambitious goal, which will require action by the United States, China, India, third world countries, Canada. I think it's a great goal, but it's probably more work than we were anticipating.
How dependent, David, is the Arctic on the rest of the world to take action? This is urgent.
It's completely dependent because so little greenhouse gas emissions come from the Arctic. There's a few soot, black carbon that happens there from the diesel that people use in the Arctic and from ships, but most of the pollution comes from the rest of the world.
The United States is chairing the Arctic Council for 2 years. What can we expect during this time in terms of climate change? Anything unique coming from the Arctic Council?
Probably, I mean, these are forums for discussion and not necessarily forums for action.
More symbolism than substance?
And that's what we're seeing all over. Arctic is a symbol for climate change and not necessarily the recipient of the action that's needed. It's the canary in the coal mine, and I sort of say, who's going to take care of the canary? The folks there need help. Their villages are falling into the ocean, but as we've seen with what's going on in Paris, Arctic villages are not one of the areas that are being looked at by the least developed countries. Unfortunately, most of the Arctic villages are within developed countries. Europe, Russia, the United States, Canada. They don't technically need the help, but it's those governments that need to help their people in the north to adapt and make the changes they need to live because of climate change.
And finally, David, let's talk about some of the sticking points. As always, it comes to money, money, money. At the end of the week, do you think there will be some kind of agreement with developed nations helping developing countries with resources and funding?
I think the developed nations have an obligation to help the least developed countries. They also have an obligation, particularly as I mentioned, the northern ones, to help their own people who live in the north. There's a big mountain to climb. I'm not sure they'll get all the way to the top, but I think they will get somewhere, that there will be some help for least developed countries, for island states, for the countries that are just wanting to become more modern, if you will, like the rest of us are.
And finally, are you optimistic about this process in Paris? Yes, no, maybe?
Cautiously optimistic, but not super optimistic.
All right, well, we'll take that. David Biette, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.